Hey man, so I was actually watching your videos from 2013 and I noticed that there was a big difference with how you were talking and as compared to like the 2021 videos. So like my question is how did you build your charisma like that? Because there was a big shift in my opinion. Like the way you talk now, it's a bit different. So I was like, you were an adult then because I recently turned 22, so I'm like I'm hoping I can change my overall charisma and I noticed you probably did it in your 30s. So
Yeah.
that gave me hope.
Yeah. So I did nothing specifically to work on. So for example, people always ask me, how do I change my voice? I didn't do anything. I promise you that I didn't do anything to try and change it. And then people are like, well, you must have jumped on steroids and that changed your voice. No, that also didn't do that. That didn't, so what it is, it's internal, right? Our external is always a manifestation of the internal. In fact, what really turned me on to this was actually Elliot Hulse bioenergetics. Now, I'm not a complete like bioenergetics person, but when I started reading that, I read this book called Fear of Life, right? That Elliot had recommended, and I was watching some of his videos, and it clicked for me. And I also read Dianetics, which is kind of weird. It's off top, but Dianetics is that Scientology book. Again, L. Ron Hubbard. I don't necessarily believe that stuff, but there's some interesting things in there where he was talking about like engrams and pain being trapped in the body. Okay, and I was like, oh, this is interesting. Like emotions and memories maybe get trapped in the body. And so that sort of just put me on this path of realizing that like that's internal state determines the external. And as I started changing my mindset, and then kind of the other overlap here is what I talk about that whole, I really do think that there is a transformation from boyhood to manhood. And I hadn't gone through it at that point. And so it's like that, just to recap it, kill your father metaphorically, and then accept full responsibility for your life. Like take your action, whatever, live your life, accept the consequences, right? Once you really internalize those two things, you live life in a completely different way, and it sort of frees you up. And so like for me, for voice, for instance, right, this is my best guess and theory of it is that you have tension in your neck, especially you're shy, you're more reserved, you're self-conscious of what people think about you, and so you sort of try to come across non-threatening, and it's at a subconscious level. And so you tighten these muscles in your neck and in your whole posture, in just how you are. And so it restricts your movement. It restricts it. You can, in the best example of this I can give you is if you walk down the street and you look at a person, right? And this is, it's I call it the pussy test. You can look at a guy and you can be like, that guy's a pussy, or that guy's not a pussy, right? I wouldn't fuck with that guy, right? It's like an instantaneous, and that's just like one vector, but it's kind of a way to sum it up. But you can kind of like look at a person without knowing them at all, right? And you could be like, you could kind of sketch what their personality would be, whether they're confident or not, whether they're extroverted or introverted, whether or not they're sad or shy or lonely, or like you could kind of really get a sketch of a person just in a brief second, just watching them walk by you. Okay. We kind of
Yeah.
have this instinctual. And so where does that come from? Well, that means that whatever is happening internally is being exhibited externally with it in that person. And so when we change our internal, we change our external. So the best thing to focus on is really focus on being a man, on the masculinity, on setting your own course in life. All the kind of things I'm trying to teach you, like having the bulldog mindset, will transform you externally, not just physically, like in muscles and things like that, but how you carry yourself, how your voice comes across, how you come across to people, right? And that sort of builds on itself. It's sort of that identity reifies itself, right? So for example, I start changing internally, I start thinking these new thoughts, and so I start acting that way. People respond to me, right? They respond to your masculinity, right? You're becoming more dominant, you're becoming more open, right? And not caring what people think. People respond to that in a positive way, which reifies that identity within you and makes it
Yeah.
stronger, right? And it's a feedback loop, right? That's why certain people become very, very shy, and certain people become more extroverted. That's why when we talk about guys in game, like there's naturals. This guy's a natural. Oh yeah, he's just because he's good looking. No, it's not because he's good looking. It's because he's good looking early on. And what happened was that identify reified itself because he went out on a limb, he talked to this girl or whatever, he got this positive feedback loop. So he said, I'm awesome, like in subconsciously, right? And so then he took more and more risks, and he kept on getting positive feedback, right? So that actually made it more likely that he would have results, because now he's acting in confidence, right? And so it's all an internal thing that changes the external. So just focus on the internal. Don't worry about that. I had a guy that I was talking to that just had messaged me on Instagram. He's like, people think that I kind of look gay. How do I give the impression? And he's like, how can you help me with this? And I'm like, don't even try and change any of that shit. Just like change internally. And then it's gonna, because if you try and like, I don't want to walk like this way or make this expression. No, you can't control all those things. It's better to change who you are, your identity, and then your actions and your behaviors and your personality will flow from that identity. And the reason why it's so, I think, visible in my case, and you don't see it very often, is because most people don't go through extreme internal changes, right? But if they do, you'll see the same type of thing.
All right, perfect. Thank you so much, man, for taking your time.